He's already hopped in.
Look gosh. Well, you didn't tell me you were.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight daily podcast powered by Andrade and Levine Accident Attorneys. It is Jackson Cantwell, announcement day #1 player in the country, announcing today at, I believe, 3:45 p.m., 2:45 Central. He is an offensive tackle from Nixa, Missouri. Miami, Georgia, Oregon are the finalists. Pete, I took you by surprise on that one.
Yeah, man. That's what happens when you hop in a minute late.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I was in a rush. Had to make sure we talked about Jackson Cantwell here. First, talk about some folks that will protect you, like Jackson Cantwell. We'll be protecting some quarterbacks as Andrade and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Andrade and Levine. All right, Pete, how we doing?
Doing well. How about you?
Yeah, man, doing good. This Cantwell thing is interesting. So figured I'd just go ahead and start with what I'm hearing. And look, here's the truth of the matter is I have not heard confidence from Miami since last week. Not that it was total pessimism, but it was more on the negative side than the positive side. P, I know that's kind of matched what you've been hearing. Now, what I will say on Jackson Cantwell, something is weird here. So you have On 3 and 247, their top recruiting guys, Steve Wilfong and Tom Lloyd, talked to all the parties involved, not just the one team. They're saying that Miami's making a push here and that their Georgia confidence isn't what it once was. Georgia insiders saying the same thing. Now, they're all still saying Georgia, but they're kind of disclaiming. I'm hearing some things that make me think just something is weird here. I can tell you, I reached out yesterday and I did not get confidence. Now, usually, I mean, as much as I can remember, I pretty much either hear what's accurate or I don't hear anything. So that tells me it's probably Georgia. Now, something's weird here from a confidentiality standpoint because he's telling these reporters that he's not talking to any of the teams and he's trying to keep all these leaks tight. And that's what Georgia's saying, which tells me that there is an element of they want to keep this suspenseful for whoever gets picked. I could tell you for a fact that basically from his visit in early March through April, Miami was the pick the whole time after that visit. So when he first said he was going to make a commitment and it sounded like he was going to commit like in a couple of days, this was like maybe a month ago, that was going to be Miami. Miami was the pick at that time, I can say for a fact. And also
we had our instant reaction recorded.
Yeah, we had the instant reaction recorded.
Full disclosure.
And at that time, there was information being pumped through national outlets that it was going to be Oregon. And it was not going to be Oregon. It was going to be Miami at that time. And now you see Wilfong and the Georgia guys are saying basically that Miami was the pick at that time before he pushed it back. So even though I was not being misinformed at that time, there was some misinformation flowing out there. So best I could tell you, and I'm being totally straight up, is I'm being told not a lot of confidence for Miami. But I'm more skeptical of anything I hear on this process than on anything else because something's weird here. If you ask my pick, I'll say Georgia because I can only go off what I know. But, it's not one of these things where I'm going to be just at the gym when this announcement goes through. I'm going to be paying attention because something doesn't smell right. If he picks Georgia, I think the advantages for Georgia would be the #1 program in the country as far as a team standpoint. They win the most consistently, and he wants to win. I think that's a pretty big factor for them. He's from Nixa, Missouri. I'm sure Athens is a pretty fun place to be for a college student. And when you talk about offensive line, they do produce NFL linemen. Now, what I've said, and which is, I believe, the truth, is that they get the Jackson Cantwells on the front end. So those guys go NFL just off talent. And since Searles has been there, those guys have gotten worse. They've underachieved both in terms of NFL draft positioning. Guys that should have been first rounders are going 3rd, 4th, 5th, or they're going in there raw. And just the production on the field from a Georgia offensive line standpoint was bad last year. And it's not like this year you look at it and say there's top 10 picks all over the place. In fact, Mauigoa is projected as a top 10 pick. You don't see any Georgia players on those offensive line watch lists. So I think the trend line for Georgia's offensive line is down. I think we saw Searles when he was here, and the team was terrible on offensive line. We saw Mirabal come in and clean it up in a year. We're top 10 within a year and have stayed there. So I feel very confident that Mirabal is better than Searles by a lot. I think Cantwell knows that part of it. But I think he also knows that the team for Georgia is a safer bet to be successful than Miami because they've been the top program for several years now, and they've been good for, since Rick got there 25 years ago. So I think that's the battle there. Oregon, I'm not seeing them as much of a threat, but I can tell you with DJ Pickett last year, the corner, everybody involved thought it was a Miami-Oregon battle. Then he went and picked LSU and stuck with it. So recruiting's tricky, man. The more I've learned about it is you really don't know until they announce. Sometimes you have a pretty good feeling, and you got indications one way. But look, Jeremiah Smith told us he was coming. He wrote since then that he was ready to pick Miami. There was an edit prepared by Hayes Fawcett. So there's an element of suspense with all these things. So I guess that's the best I can tell you on Jackson Cantwell as we sit here today.
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, the last 24 hours with the stuff of don't be surprised if it's Miami does smell like them trying to throw the scent off of what the last couple of weeks have been trending towards Georgia and building suspense for the announcement itself. In terms of, the Cantwell camp, if you're going to call it that, kind of trying to build that suspense. But, like you said, this is the number one recruit in the country. There's a lot of twists and turns, kind of late in the process here. And I mean, I think even going back to like, we use the Jeremiah Smith example, D, but what about Shamar Stewart? I think that one who was a top 5 sort of, that thing went down to the wire as well. Right. So that's what happens with these sort of prospects. But as you said, based on what I had heard this weekend, the confidence was definitely towards Georgia there from Miami's side. I don't want to call it confidence, but I think Miami was feeling Georgia. And I just don't see anything that would have happened through the weekend that, coming off a Georgia visit that would have, swung him in Miami's favor. But I guess we'll see today.
Yeah, so here we got the dog fans in the chat. Appreciate you guys joining us. He's saying underachieved, 4 losses in 2 years. Georgia as a program, defensively, all the other things they do, I had nothing but respect for. I think they're the best. I think Kirby Smart's the man. I think they're the best program in the country right now. They're the guys you got to knock off. The offensive line, I think everybody would agree they underachieved last year because they stunk. And I know if Motivated, Dedicated, my guy right here, if I went through his comments during the season, I'm sure there was a lot of, man, our offensive line's killing us. Cyril sucks. He's holding us back, etc. So that's how I would kind of lay it out. I think Georgia's a program is everything that Kirby Smart's selling it as. I think the offensive line is the weakness right now. And I think Cantwell could very easily have a new offensive line coach in a year with the way things are trending because Georgia's offensive line is no sure bet to be much better this year. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
It does seem, and that the momentum shifted when Jared Curtis committed. And I did say at the time, I was like, man, I don't know if they're just, these predictions are coming in just because the number 1 quarterback committed. But I think if he picks Georgia, there's no doubt that had a big influence.
Yeah, it's those things happen that the players will recruit players. We've seen that a million times. Cantwell, look, it's not like they're like teammates, but they built a relationship. These top players do. It's kind of ever since LeBron came to Miami, you've seen a little bit of this in recruiting, and I think it's gone further ahead. It's gotten even more that way since the camps have gotten better. The All-America games, now you have underclassmen going. So these kind of things have brought these top players together a little tighter. So look, it doesn't help Miami, that fact, but I think what's keeping Miami in the game is Miami's recruited him the hardest. So start there. He said it himself. And the fact that he feels confident that he could be like a Penei Sewell, that he can be like a Francis Mauigoa and just go right there, right tackle, left tackle, whatever it is. I think probably more likely right. And then develop into that first round top 10 player.
Our boy here, Motivated, Dedicated, said that same offensive line averaged 38 points per game in 23. They were 13-1.
Yeah, they were Trent. Look, when Cyril's joined Georgia, they had just won the national championship. I believe they'd already signed, your Amarius Mims, your Broderick Jones, your top 10 freaks of nature. So they were good and getting worse with the drop off happening this year, or sorry, last year, 24, and now 25. I do not see an Amarius Mims lined up there as far as a projected top first round pick. I don't see a Broderick Jones lined up there as far as a projected first round pick. So what I'm seeing is a trend. Look, I hope we're Miami fans, so we hope a lot of that 23 Georgia stuff comes to fruition because that means Miami has a number 1 overall pick taking snaps for the Hurricanes. So I hope some of that 23 magic for Georgia gets recreated here in some respects. But offensive line-wise, I think has been a clear trend down. And look, part of the reason why Carson Beck is at Miami is because, A, the offensive line was so bad that his numbers dropped off precipitously. I'll say precipitously. He still threw for 3,500 yards, but he had a drop-off. Number 2, he hurt his elbow, and he got beat up all year. That's part of the reason why he's not in the NFL, and he's at the University of Miami. So I don't think anybody can argue that the offensive line is a weakness for Georgia, because Georgia fans would say that themselves if they were not trying to recruit Jackson Cantwell. The second they get Jackson Cantwell, they're going to go back to crapping on the offensive line, because that is the weakness of what is a national championship contender, a great program. Quarterback maybe too, because I'm not a huge Gunnar Stockton believer, but I think he could be okay.
Brandon says, but we have an elite court, because this is coming off the comments that I made about Jared Curtis. He says, we have an elite QB coming in with Coleman. I like Coleman's talent, love the arm talent, and I think there's going to be guys that want to play with him. But at the end of the day, 247 has him as a 3-star. He's a number 14 player in the composite, 14 quarterback in the composite. That does not hold the same cachet as the number 1 overall QB in the country to another 5-star recruit. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. Kermit Russell, appreciate you. Yeah, smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. We're every single day. And if Cantwell commits, I promise you we'll be live right away and continue to bring you content. We got a lot of stuff going on. Announcements at 3:45 p.m. for Jackson Cantwell. Central time. Yep.
2:45
Central.
Yeah.
3:45.
3:45 Eastern time.
Yep. But man, look, let's talk about the player a little bit here while we're at it, P. While you pull up the highlights. Here's the story on Cantwell. For those of you who haven't followed him as close, just knowing he's a top player from Nixa, Missouri, right in the Springfield area, an area known for having some great throwers. And this guy's no exception, probably the best thrower in America as far as not in college or already in the Olympics. Both of his parents were Olympic throwers. His dad won a silver medal. So it's in his blood. He is elite at the shot put, also very good at the discus. 6'7", really built more like a basketball player. 300, but you see him, he's got room to grow. He's not a fully developed kid. He's more tall and lean than you'd think for someone with such freakish weight room and track strength, which tells you that he's going to get even stronger, more powerful. He's that natural power in his hands. Athletic, tested well in the combine circuit, played some basketball, played some tight end. Probably more of a right tackle than a left tackle based on what I've seen. But the power is freakish with him. And also you have a great mental game with him as well. Both of his parents being Olympians. He just has a different understanding of what it takes to be elite. You see the power right there. And he easily just knocks guys back. He has a different understanding of what it takes to be elite. Very good work ethic. I think his ACT was like 33 or something, like early in his high school career. So the IQ is very high. He's approaching this process like a professional. If he picks Georgia, again, I think there's reasons for it, probably more team-oriented than just purely offensive line-oriented. But he's looking at all these things. He knows exactly who Miami has projected to go in the draft. I saw an interview with him. He was rattling off names. He was saying, Malinois, it's top 10 pick. Markel Bell is going to get drafted, and Nes Cooper. You knew the whole offensive line depth chart. We'll see.
I've heard, outside of just like being, understanding what it takes, I've heard football IQ wise has like a great understanding of blocking concepts, which you come into Miami, you have to understand that it's a different level in terms of what you're pretty much expected to know. We heard Cam Ward talk about protection schemes and things of that nature, how much Coach Mirabal helped him in that respect. And the offensive linemen there's a lot that's put on them from a mental point of view, which isn't always the case at other places.
Yep, absolutely. And I think he's mentally capable of handling it. I'll be honest, I think in terms of starting right away, Manoa was probably more prepared for that part of it. Separate from the ultimate upside, I think just in terms of like show up to, in spring and start immediately like Manoa did. With Cantwell not being at a school like IMG, not going against that competition, particularly when it comes to being a pass blocker, I think there'll be more of an adjustment period for him wherever he goes. But upside, I think pretty similar as far as, that NFL top 10 pick upside. But I think Manoa actually probably was more ready to play than Cantwell is. Another thing to watch with Cantwell, wherever he goes, is he has the option of throwing again this spring in track, meaning the spring of 26. If he does throw in spring, he's probably going to be setting national records. He's already set a few. But in terms of like just blowing him out the water, he could do that if he comes back in spring. But when he goes to a school, his chances of starting as a freshman are obviously much higher if he goes in spring. Francis Manoa did the same thing at IMG after playing much better competition at IMG. So we'll see which way it goes with Cantwell. I don't know, what his plan is. If he goes to Georgia, could he start right away? Probably. Ernest Green will be out the door, one of their tackles. Monroe Freeling, we'll see what happens with him. He was kind of up and down. Got Miami recruited in the same class as Manoa and Okunlola.
I don't know. There were some Georgia fans in the comments the other day saying he's a first round pick. So maybe we need to do more research there, D.
No, he's saying that Cantwell will be a first round pick.
No. There were people there were Georgia fans in the comments the other day when we put out that video talking about the whole recruitment, saying that Monroe Freeling is going to be a first round pick this year. So
I liked his talent when he came out. I could see him developing into that. I have not seen any watch list saying, he's a first round pick projected next year.
I know. I'm kind of making fun at the whole.
Yeah. No, it could happen. Thing. I'm not gonna like totally, crap on it. I mean, this guy's a talented guy. I remember we recruited Monroe Freeling, long, athletic guy. Kind of reminds me of like how Ben Congdon was this year. That's some similarities there with Freeling and Congdon, just the way they looked out of high school. Freeling, higher rated player, was a late riser too. I remember his ranking kept going up. So Freeling's good, but it's not like Manoa where you look at the projected top 10 picks and he's there top of the board. Freeling's like a motivated, dedicated, saying here, Freeling's had some injuries as well, which is true. But I mean, I like Freeling, but again, it's not like with Notre Dame, for example, Miami's first opponent. You could say their offensive line is projected to be elite. Top 3, maybe top 1, multiple guys there that are already being talked about as NFL high picks. Miami, similar as far as they're already getting NFL buzz. These guys are proven elite. Look at top rushing yards per attempt, which I look at. To me, rushing yards per attempt is a big indicator, especially when you get to these Power 4 teams, of just the ability of the offensive line to move guys and just pure offensive line horsepower. Notre Dame was 4th nationally. Miami's 5th last year. I believe Georgia was like 89th or something like that. So different ability to move guys between the Notre Dames and the Miamis of the world, and what you have with Georgia, at least last year. Cantwell would obviously help them in that respect. Certainly would help Miami as well. So we'll see, man. Look, I can tell you this. If Miami loses Cantwell, if they win Cantwell, it's going to be huge. It's going to get a lot of momentum going. If they lose, it's going to be a huge blow because you had 2 offensive linemen that you really wanted with Pepe and Cantwell. You go 0 for 2 if that's the case. Miami hasn't really won that kind of battle since Manoa and Okunlola back in 23. So that'd be an extended drought. That's not
for O-line. Justin Scott was a big win.
Oh yeah, Blunt and all these other guys, but saying just for tackle. So that'd be a big loss. And I think in my opinion, if that happens, there's a lot of talent in Florida this year. With the Florida offensive linemen have been disappointing historically. Rivers was a good one for Miami, but they've been disappointing historically. So it's a historically great year on paper in Florida, but you don't know how those guys are going to turn out. I happen to think Joel Irvin, who's committed, is going to be elite, but you don't know. And the track record of Florida offensive line is not great. There's other guys you can go and get that are in the mix in Florida, but that's probably what you do in the high school level. But I don't think you have these elite tackles like Cantwell and Pepe walking around. Those guys typically live up to their ranking lately. You see a lot of those guys like J.C. Latham, Will Campbell. I mean, who got drafted first round this year at tackle? A lot of those guys were blue chip guys coming out. And
I don't think the Armand Membu kid was a blue chip recruit. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it was a blue chip, but not like an elite, kind of like, I don't think he was like a top 100 or top, elite type guy. But Campbell, I believe, was a pretty high pick. You look at J.C. Latham last year, Joe Alt, those kind of guys. So who else was picked high this year? It was actually a weak tackle year. Donovan Jackson.
Membu was
Josh Connerly. Josh Connerly was a big recruit.
Yeah, Connerly was a big recruit.
Kelvin Banks was a top 10 recruit. So those guys tend, in my experience, to pan out last year. Joe Alt, J.C. Latham, these were pretty highly rated guys. Amarius Mims from Georgia, who was picked very low considering his talent level, quite frankly, but he was picked high, as far as being a first round pick. So those guys typically turn out pretty good. If I'm Miami and I do not land Cantwell, if you land Cantwell, you're in it with Cantwell. He's starting next year. You're paying him a ton of money. You're feeling pretty good about that. If you do not land Cantwell after missing Pepe, and probably not going to be able to flip Pepe back because he's Polynesian, his brother's at USC, that's not a profile to flip. Although USC could go down, coach gets fired, it's possible, but I'd say unlikely. I would make sure I have a big war chest for the portal, if that's the case, to make sure you land. Last year it was like Isaiah World, Emmanuel Pregnon. I think Oregon got both of those guys, right? Oregon got Pregnon
was back, and did they end up getting him? Because he was between you. I think he was looking at USC for a while too. He was at USC. Excuse me. He went to Oregon.
Instead of going to the draft. Instead of going to the draft. He went to instead of going to the draft, he went to Oregon. So Oregon got really the top two guys in the portal, two NFL guys on the offensive line, and Pregnon and Isaiah World. Obviously, they had money to spend on that. So, and that's where they wanted their money to go. So I could see a situation where Miami next year, if they do not get Cantwell, will say, hey, we're going to be elite in the portal in 2025 portal, the winter portal 25-26, and get guys that are top of the market and convince them that they can be the next portal guy to come to Miami. You did that with Cohen and Matt Lee, ended up kind of solidifying a top 10, top 5 offensive line that year. So, that to me is where I would go if I was trying to make sure we had an elite offensive line in 26, probably more portal than just go to the next high school offensive lineman and try to throw a ton of money at him. Whoever we get on the offensive line, I know where they'll be dining to keep their strength and their ability to push guys off the line and hold an anchor. That would be Islas Canarias Express in the Dayland Dining Pavilion. That'll really help your anchor eating some of this food. Just unbelievable diversity of options for a Cuban place, because you have all the traditional Cuban place options. There's a restaurant that's been around for 40 plus years, gets voted top Cuban restaurant, top croqueta in Miami, in the world. I mean, every single year they're winning awards, but they've diversified. They've added new stuff, kind of kept with the times while also being traditional. You got the chef's favorite right there, the kimchi mojo pork. You're not getting that anywhere else besides Islas Canarias. Eileen Andrade, the heiress of the Islas Canarias dynasty, great chef, highly renowned kind of, gourmet type chef. She went to Korea and came back mixing Cuban and Korean flavors. So you have all those options. Again, if you don't want the traditional stuff, they got all the traditional stuff. They got Venezuelan items with tequeños. If you don't want to get, the classic pastelitos or yuca or whatever else you can get that's more Cuban oriented. So whether you're traditional or old school, Islas Canarias Express, absolute best in the business, right there in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion. Nick Isaac saying, I don't love that strategy. Championship line of scrimmages are built in high school recruiting. Look, they're trying to get Cantwell. They're trying to get Pepe. So they're trying to get those guys. If they are unable to get those guys, I think portal makes a lot of sense, because at least in the portal, if you have money, you should be able to recruit top guys in the portal. Go back to Cohen and Lee. Those were probably the top guys in the portal back then. Miami was able to land both of those guys. It's an easy sell for those older players. You can give them the same. Miami does well in the portal anyways. Plus, you can kind of sell them on, hey, we've had guys that are now in the NFL that we brought in through the portal. You'd be the next one. So I could see that being a good way to just finish those last pieces. You'll bring back Okunlola. Most likely, you'll bring back Kinsler, Ryan Rodriguez, guys like that. But you needed some juice in that room. I think this will be a good offensive line class regardless. Be a lot better with Jackson Cantwell in it, so you hope that gets done. But that's the direction I would lean towards if I was
Nick Isaac says, I don't love that strategy. Championship line of scrimmages are built in high school recruiting. I don't think they'll grab 3 or 4 guys, but I mean, pretty much every year they've had a transfer starter. Cohen, Matt Lee, Brockermeyer now this year. So I think the base of what they do is still going to be high school classes. But if you bring in 1 or 2 guys there, I don't think it's the end of the world.
No. I mean, I think, look, you want Jackson Cantwell starting at right tackle next year. That is the goal as of 9:12 a.m. Tuesday, May 13th. Cantwell's off the board. You kind of look elsewhere. And then if that's the case, I think probably going more towards, the JUCO ranks. But you're still going to be after a lot of top guys in Florida. There are a lot of great offensive linemen in Florida. Cannon Pickett, Miami's battling Clemson for. That's one I think Miami could win. Big physical interior offensive lineman. You already got Joel Irvin, John Jones from the Bay Area, the Tampa Bay, Clearwater, St. Pete area has got a ton of guys that are high D4, high power 4 players as far as how they're being recruited. So you want to look at some of those guys. You're still recruiting Ryan Moret. Brett College, he could potentially go to Georgia as well. Somebody you had been recruiting in IMG. So there's a lot of guys in the mix. Tupoy from California, or sorry, Tommy Tofi from California. I apologize. Miami's really made a run there. Big Polynesian kid was here on campus in the spring. Huge, and Miami's up the gang. Oh wait, hold on. Wilfon just dropped an article. Let's see what's going on here. Is this a new article or?
Yeah, 1 minute ago.
Let's see what Wilfon says. Where is that? Are you reading the article?
I don't have access on
Decision Day buzz. I'm seeing about 1 hour ago. It's Decision Day. 1 hour ago.
No, 1 minute ago. Go to his Twitter. He just tweeted it. I mean, he tweeted an article. I don't know what the article says.
Let's see what Wolfong's saying. And look, Wolfong had Georgia when he was still Miami, so I'm not sure he's on top of it. No, this is okay. This was an hour ago. He didn't say anything about sources.
He tweeted. Well,
I'm reading it right now. He's saying several sources into the evening thought the UGA was still outstanding. Folks that spent time with Cantwell over the weekend.
You change your pronunciation of UGA every single time you say it.
Yeah, so he's saying that it sounds like Wolfong talked to Curtis and Caldwell was talking about Yuga to play, like playing together. He said the program fits his personality and nature, and I think they are optimistic around Athens after talking to sources Tuesday, which today is Tuesday. Miami's very much in this one. I'm hearing the communication with Miami is strong, and there are sources that believe Cantwell ends up playing for Mario Cristobal and his staff.
They've definitely been in communication, so that's for sure.
Yep. So we'll see, man. I'll be paying attention. This is a fun one. I mean, look, we're in the game, so good for us on the clicks and the views. I kind of like being in these battles. You don't like to finish second. If you do finish second, you want to win them, but the only way you can win them is by being in them. So I really don't know what's going to happen. You can win it, and if you win, you get the number 1 player in the country. If not, you wasted a lot of time. But it's 2025, man. You got to swing big. And then look, if Georgia's offensive line has a terrible year and Searles gets fired, does this open back up? Stranger things have happened in recruiting. You got to play the game, and you got to go after the types of players that you want to play at University of Miami. So obviously they've identified this player. They put a ton of into him. I think back to Cam Ward. Remember Will Howard was talking about how Miami offered him a ton of money. Miami wanted Cam Ward. They kept Will Howard warm. They liked him, but Cam Ward was always the top prospect for them. And they stayed with that even until after Cam Ward said he was going to the NFL. Ultimately, Cam Ward goes to Miami, number 1 pick overall in the draft. All-time great. So you can't win those battles unless you're kind of stubborn and persistent. So who knows? knowing Mario Cristobal, I don't think he slept too much last night. He's actually up at the ACC meetings. So I heard he's in a great mood with people around him. So, who knows? Who knows what's going on?
Motivated, dedicated. Says Cereals will be there for 10 more years. I'm sorry to hear that for you Bulldog fans, man.
Yeah, I'm sure that the defensive lines in the SEC are ecstatic at that news. This was last year was the first time they were able to just slap around a Georgia offensive line. I've never seen a Georgia offensive line that couldn't run the ball. I really haven't. And at the end's a good back. What did he get drafted? 4th round. So, when he's not running for any yards, and you had a passing game that threw for 3,500 yards. So it's not like you didn't have to respect the quarterback. Receivers were pretty weak, but yeah, something was up in Georgia. And I say that with the utmost respect for the Georgia program. And I expect their offensive line to be good. That's why it's surprising when it's bad. If I told Miami fans 3 years ago, hey, in 3 years, Miami's going to have a better offensive line than Georgia, they'd be like, get out of here. You're being a homer. But that is what's happened. Defense, there's still a pretty big gap there. Overall, pretty big gap there. Quarterback, I don't know. I think Miami's got the better one right now. But certainly defensively, the gold standard, which you're trying to get to, is Georgia. And that's, I think, where I think guys like Hayden Lowe, guys like Armando Blunt, guys like Justin Scott, those are Georgia-type defensive linemen, 260-plus guys with athleticism that can play with power, that can beat you athletically. So I think that's kind of what you're building towards when it comes to defense. But offensive line, we passed them, and that was a big surprise, I think. A lot of ripple effects, too, with this commit. Obviously, Jared Curtis already at Miami, or at Georgia, I'm sorry. Derek Cooper, major target for Miami and Georgia, number 5-star running back, number 1 player in Dade and Broward and Palm Beach, I believe, depending who you ask, but I would put him there as the best player down here. Size, speed, elite. Georgia's after him. Obviously, offensive line, something he's watching close to see who's blocking for him, especially a run blocker like Cantwell, that's kind of his forte. So Cooper's in there. Look at Tyler Atkinson, a big linebacker from a big size-wise linebacker, but a big-time linebacker from Buford, Tyler Atkinson. He's someone Georgia's fighting to keep. A lot of schools after him. Miami, one of those schools, but that's a tough battle. But one of these things here is if Miami gets Jackson Cantwell, it'll be a huge investment in Jackson Cantwell, but they'll be very happy to pay those checks. If they don't, now Georgia's tied up in a lot of money in Cantwell. So do you squeeze them more on Cooper? Maybe an Atkinson? This is not an era of infinite money. So this is a major free agent battle that you want to win. If you don't win it, it is a loss. There's really no silver lining as far as like this is something you're putting all your energy in to get done. If you don't get it done, it's a bad deal. But if you're able to get it done, if you're not able to get it done, now Georgia is going to be in pretty deep on Cantwell money-wise, and maybe you up the offer on a Cooper or someone like that. I'm just speculating, but that's something that I could see happening if this goes sideways. Cooper will still be on the board. Calvin Russell at receiver. I know that communication's picked up with Miami. Not that it would ever slow down. Miami's always been after him pretty hard, but it's been better communication. James Johnson, big defensive tackle, is now at Northwestern, originally from the west coast of Florida. He was a major Georgia target, major Miami target as well. Those defensive tackles are always sort of money deals. Not only money, but money is always a major issue.
And D, I'll say this, D. Let me see who it was. I said James Kane says Miami was not going to lose because of lack of development at O-line. I would rather you don't get him. Go get a Tristan Keys. I think you were the one who said that to me yesterday off the air. Like, I'd rather go put that into a position that they actually have trouble landing elite guys. I don't think losing Jackson Cantwell is going to have any, like, if it ends up happening, have any effect on the season next year. It's obviously it's short-sighted to say because this is a 2, 3, 4 year thing down the line, but I don't think it's going to like make or break what happens this next season after this one. But I think if you get in an elite big-time receiver, that could change your outcome of a season, as we saw with Jeremiah Smith this last year.
Yep, 100%. These are impact guys, and they can make a big difference quick. Question about Palm Beach. I want to get to that. So Wes Boca has a couple guys, one of whom is committed to the University of Miami, and Javian Mallory, the running back. Jaden Broadnax, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is a big, long corner out of West Boca. I saw him in a camp. He's committed to Louisville right now. I know Miami are big fans of Adam Balagoon Ali out of Cardinal Newman, originally at Benjamin. Big athletic linebacker. I know they kind of monitored that situation. He's a name to watch. Jaron Hughley, athlete, another long, pretty athletic guy, also at Cardinal Newman. So it's interesting with Palm Beach. You see these West Boca, the private schools, they're really kind of doing their thing when it comes to Palm Beach right now, more so than the big public schools. Dylan Faison, whose brother's that lacrosse player who's at Notre Dame as a receiver. He's at St. Andrews. He's also, I think, a pretty big lacrosse player / wide receiver. He's going to Notre Dame. So there's a couple guys in Palm Beach to keep an eye on. But I don't think Palm Beach is super loaded this year. South Florida in general, I would say average, by South Florida standards. It's not as down like it's been in the past. You saw this year in the draft, you didn't see that many South Florida guys. Shamar Stewart, first round. You saw...
who went?
Higgins.
Higgins. The other day we were talking about who's from South Florida that we were forgetting. Higgins was one that we forgot because he was a pretty high pick.
Yeah, Jane Higgins was like top 40 pick, I believe. Mason Taylor was a top 40 pick, I believe, or top 50 at least. So those are 3 South Florida guys. South Florida really kind of carried Florida this year. Florida was weak, man. When you look at the NFL draft, that was a big surprise. And not to change subject, this is kind of an interesting thing to me, Pete, is that Florida. We talked on the boards that Florida and South Florida dominated for so long, and Texas was kind of underachieving. Texas is really having a moment of really good play, and Florida and South Florida is really down. This year, I thought South Florida kind of carried Florida, but neither one was where it needed to be. You had Shamar Stewart in the first round, South Florida out of Miami Pace. In the second round, you had Jaden Higgins, who was actually the second pick of the second round, so he was really high up there from Miami-Dade County as well. Mason Taylor from Broward. You got to scroll down, man, before you get to the next Florida guy. There really wasn't a lot. RJ Harvey from Orlando, but I mean, it was pretty lean. Ashton Gelati, top of the third round from we just talked about Palm Beach. He's somebody that we talked about on CanesInSight.com. 7 million posts and counting. He was a South Florida guy. Pat Bryan, Azarea Thomas, third rounders from more up north. I believe Pat Bryant's from Jacksonville. Azarea Thomas, I want to say, is from the Panhandle. He's from up in FSU.
Yeah, Azaria is from
Azaria, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was, like I said, it was pretty lean when it comes to South Florida this year. But these things go in waves. Next year, in 2 years, we're going to talk about the number 1 overall pick with Jeremiah Smith. Next year, Ruben Bain, R. Mason Thomas, your pass rushers, I think, is where South Florida has really been staying level. In fact, increasing is pass rush. We mentioned Shamar Stewart as a pass rusher, Ashton Gelati pass rusher. This next year, you're going to talk about Ruben Bain. Look at, Greg Rousseau. You look at Nick Benito, the Bosas, of course, Brian Burns, of course. It's been a pretty good run there for defensive ends, pass rushers from South Florida. Tyreek Sapp's another one this year is probably going to get drafted pretty high next year in 26. And then, of course, who am I missing? Kenyatta Jackson could be a pick. R. Mason Thomas, I mentioned earlier. So, we'll see how South Florida kind of develops there. But yeah, it's I'd love to get an offensive lineman, man, to block some of these dudes on the edge. And that's what Jackson Cantwell will bring you. Got 1,600 on live now. By the way, if you're listening to the show, we're going to go off the air here in a few minutes. But if you want to follow this Jackson Cantwell stuff all day, CanesInsight.p. Pull up CanesInsight.com. So, again, if you want to follow this stuff, go to CanesInsight.com. It's the number 1 Canes community on the planet. Extremely busy. It is the reason there's 7 million posts is because when there's a commit like this one, people are on all day, nonstop. So if you're just posted up on Canes Insight, there's the article from Trinidad Breeze. But if you're just on the forum, that just to give you a feel, that Jackson Cantwell thread, which is being updated every 2 seconds with any social media tweet, any post from another site, anything that's happening, it is got, see how many views it has. Just Jackson Cantwell alone, 280,000 views on the Jackson Cantwell thread. So,
so D, they're saying, people on the thread right now from the live show are saying, D Money's telling you all live it's Georgia. Enjoy your day. It's been Georgia for a while. I don't know that you're saying that, but
no, I'm not. I'll correct it there. They got to be, that's why people got to listen to the podcast. No, I'm not saying it's Georgia. I'm saying I'm getting Georgia vibes talking to Miami, but this thing smells like misdirection to me. Not saying it's not going to be Georgia. It's not going to be Georgia. I'm just saying, like, I'm not buying what's being out there from any side on this. My prediction would probably be Georgia, just because I'm not getting confidence. Typically, I'll get either silence or the right answer. Usually the right answer. We'll see, man. We'll see how this thing goes. I'll tell you, like I said, I will be tuning in at 3:45 no matter what to see what's going on with
let me know what happens.
Where are you going to be on the golf course?
I don't play golf. I already told you.
Are you retired from golf already?
I no, man. I just don't have time to play. But I'm just letting you know. I don't know if I want to subject myself to it. So let me know what happens.
Well, I know you're happy about your Knicks taking that terrible thing with Tatum, man. The one bad NBA guy that actually plays games and doesn't sit out every other two games gets hurt. Now everybody's going to sit out. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I would have liked to beat them at full strength, but we'll have to do it. We'll have to do it against them with a man down.
Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton faced off at a Monday Night Raw WWE not too long ago. So WWE, as usual, kind of predicting what's going to happen here in the wider world, predicting this Jalen Brunson Tyrese Halliburton matchup not too long ago. So here's what Johnny Lagoon saying: Irvin will be drafted 2 rounds prior if Cantwell goes to Yuga. I don't know. I think Cantwell's going to be fine wherever he goes because he's a self-motivated kind of dude. Even though his development might not be the best, he's going to be so personally invested in his development. I think he's going to be okay wherever he goes, whether he's as good as he could be. I think the best chance for his personal development is Miami with Mirabal, at least the way it's currently set up. But we'll see, man. I think Joel Irvin's going to be an absolute monster. I've said it since the beginning. I said it when it looked like we were going to get Cantwell. I said it when now I'm saying, my pick would be Georgia, although I don't know. This guy's elite, no matter who is here. 6'7", 330, wingspan ridiculous, hand size well over 11. I mean, this guy's physically just unique. He can move. He can bend his knees. He plays hard. Listening to an interview with him over there on the West Coast where he's from, Fort Myers. He wants to be a meteorologist, and just hearing, the guy's just like a smart guy. He has that good offensive line personality where he's very mean on the field, but he's smart. So, I'm a big fan here of Joel Irvin. I think he is a 5-star type player, but you're not only required to have one of those guys. It's not like, oh, we got Joel Irvin, we don't need Cantwell. Listen, I promise you, Miami is putting incredible effort into landing Jackson Cantwell. So the last thing that you would hear me say is, we don't need him. We're fine without him. They want him bad, and that's why they've been recruiting him so hard. Anything else going on, Pete, in the world of sports or the world of Canes? It seems like it's so focused on Jackson Cantwell. There's not that much else going on.
Just trying to figure out who they fill these last couple spots with for the basketball roster. That's pretty much it. And then definitely going to be a hire coming here. Got the name, waiting. Trenton Breeze got the name, I got to say. Waiting to get the clearance to announce that in terms of the hire, new basketball coaching hire, assistant coach, guy who's had a lot of experience, has been a head coach. So I like the addition to the staff, and then most likely still going to be another addition to the personnel side. But
Pete, I just sent you something in the private chat real quick. Speaking of what's going on, while Pete's pulling that up, this weekend, starting Thursday, earlier this weekend, Notre Dame, final series of the season. Canes really need this one to be in a good position to make the NCAA tournament, have a good seed. They have to beat Notre Dame. So please join us for the final home series of the season as Miami takes on Notre Dame. Jam-packed fan appreciation weekend. Starts Thursday night, not the usual Friday night start for the series. Thursday night. Don't miss the pregame happy hour, $4 beers from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Hang out with Canes fans. It'll be a great event. Friday and Saturday. I'll be there probably Friday myself. Got the All-Star game for E-Money for the Grapeland base or the Miami Youth Baseball League up in Grapeland. We'll have the All-Star game here on Thursday, so I will not be there on Thursday. But on Friday, will be there, and Saturday. Collect exclusive Hurricanes baseball trading cards. I'm sure my kids will love that. Yours will as well. Limited edition and free with admission for the first 250 fans, which is going to be a lot of people there. So 250, you got to get there early. Last chance to cheer on the Canes at home. Let's pack the light, finish strong. Grab your tickets now at MiamiHurricanes.com/baseball tickets. That's MiamiHurricanes.com/baseball tickets. But yeah, Pete, pull up what I just posted.
Yeah, I
here.
have it. I have it here.
So this is Bryce Fitzgerald, the only signee who's not on campus right now from that class of 25. So the class that just signed here in December and February. The only guy that's not on campus already is Bryce Fitzgerald. And the reason is, number one, Columbus doesn't let you graduate early. But as a result, he gets to play more sports. And look at this. 3-time state champion in 3 sports. So 3 different sports state champion.
And he would have had a couple more basketball state titles if he had played this year and last year.
So he won a state championship at Belen Jesuit, the best academic institution in the university in South Florida.
Backed up by absolutely zero factuality, but go ahead.
Factuality. Did they teach you that
zero,
word?
Zero.
In Columbus. So basketball state championship for Belen Jesuit on the athletic side. Then he goes to Columbus, wins the state championship there in football as a defensive back / wide receiver, and then won the 4x100 relay for Columbus in track. So track state championship in sprints, basketball state championship as a guard. He was actually a very good guard. He had an impact in that game that they won. He had like 13 points or something. And then football, obviously the best player on Columbus on that state championship team. So this is a dude that could do it all. He had a 700 meter time this year. A little bit of wind aided, but he's in that 10.6, 10.8 range. Ran a 4.4 electronic. You see his highlights here at wide receiver. I mean, this dude is probably the best athlete in Florida this year. DJ Pickett, another really good athlete, obviously, but just overall athleticism, I would probably lean Bryce Fitzgerald because of the basketball, because of the fluidity on the football field and the production. One of the best kick returners in South Florida in recent memory. One of the best ball hawks in South Florida recent memory. I think he's probably a corner or receiver long-term on the football field, but a guy that can do a lot. So really, really pumped about Bryce Fitzgerald, his ability, and what he's bringing to the Miami Hurricanes. And look, if you want to get guys like Bryce Fitzgerald, if you want to get guys like Jackson Cantwell, if you want to get whoever we move on to after Jackson Cantwell, there's only one way to make sure that we are in the game here, getting these things done, winning battles like we won for Justin Scott, Marquise Lightfoot, Hayden Lowe, Armando Blunt, all those 5 stars, Francis Mawanoa. That is CanesConnection.com/CIS, CanesConnection.com/CIS. I believe we're going to announce next Tuesday, so a week from today, I'll be doing a private Zoom to give you the absolute latest on recruiting, whether it's after Jackson Cantwell picks Miami or after Jackson Cantwell picks Georgia or wherever he goes. We will have the latest kind of going forward, exclusive stuff I can't say on here because we don't need these Georgia fans in the comments aggregating them. So if you want to be on the absolute inner circle of Miami Hurricanes information with sources that, for common sense purposes, I think you could tell are unassailable sources, just use your common sense where it's coming from. CanesConnection.com/CIS. Be a booster, be an insider, be a true part of what's happening. And when Miami raises that ACC championship trophy, maybe when they raise that national championship trophy down the road, you'll know you were a part of it because you weren't just sitting on the sidelines. You were contributing. CanesConnection.com/CIS. Make sure you get that /CIS so you get access to the insider stuff. CanesConnection.com/CIS. Almost 2,000 on, man. These morning, I thought people would be working in the morning when we did these things, but now I'm realizing this is the time to do it.
I don't know, man. We probably could have done this one at whatever time, but it's decision day for Cantwell. I think that helps.
Yeah, listen. So tune in again. Like I said, sign up for Canes Insight because we're gonna have. You're gonna want to be on Canes Insight for the announcement. If it goes our way, it's gonna be a flurry of booty gifs and celebratory stuff. People going crazy. The pages will be flipping like this. Because of the amount of posting you get at that time.
I gotta hop off here. I gotta go.
Yeah. Go to the dentist. Get your teeth fixed.
Not dentist.
Peace.
Haircut.
Oh, get your haircut. All right. That needs fixing too. Peace. So in terms of the CanesInsight.com, it goes our way, it's going to be great. It doesn't go our way, it's still funny because people are just cracking jokes. It's a fun environment to kind of let your sorrows out. So CanesConnection.com, recommend it totally. Black Tie saying haircut appointment over the show. We're wrapping up here, man. We're almost done, but I can handle it. Pete needed that haircut. So almost 1900 on, man. This is nuts. Sign up for CanesInSight.com if you haven't. It's all free. Read the threads. It's 280,000 something views now. It'll be 500,000 by the time he picks one school. So join the conversation. CanesInsight.com. Appreciate everybody. Go Canes.